For our blog, Where the Hell is Newport, Kentucky, we chose to focus on some of the darker aspects of Newport's history, specifically the Sin City era from the late 1800s to the 1960s. This was a time when Newport was nationally known for the crime and illegal activities that occurred within the city. Some have even called it the first Las Vegas. We decided to focus on this because we thought this sounded like an interesting contrast to the seemingly calm reputation that the city has now.
The starting point for our research was the gangster tour that we went on as a group. We sat inside the dueling piano bar and were shown a presentation about this Sin City era of Newport's history. We then went on a walking tour and were shown many of the buildings that were landmarks of the city at that time. Pretty quickly, we realized Newport was an entirely different world back then. Neon signs, casinos, and strip clubs were present up and down Monmouth Street, the economic center of the city. Billions of dollars likely ran through the casinos and slot machines that were set up in restaurants and barbershops.
Notable crime families like the Cleveland Syndicate and Al Capone's gang set up shop in Newport, and much of the crime in the city was ignored by politicians due to the gracious overpaying of taxes to the government by the gangsters. American icons such as Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe regularly visited the city to have a good time.
The city was home to many Hollywood movie-like stories like the ballad of gangster lawyer George Remus and the attempted framing of Sheriff George Ratterman. Eventually, many of the residents of the city became fed up with the blind eye that law enforcement was turning to all of the crime that was going on. Riots erupted in the streets as a rebellion against the city's police and officials, who looked to be in no hurry to clean Newport up. In the 1960s, a purge of the crime in the city began, led by Ratterman, that finally was able to clean up the streets. However, the influence of these gangster and crime-filled times is still present in modern-day Newport. After the gangster identity of the city seemed to be on its way out the door, Newport has become known more and more as a city of rockers. Newport and the greater Cincinnati area in general became a popular destination for rock and roll acts, from alt-rock like the Grateful Dead tribute bands to punk rockers in modern times. Buildings like the Thompson House on Newport on the Levee, which is named after the Tommy gun popularized by gangsters, have become famous as venues for rock acts and other live events.
This project has definitely given all of us an entirely new understanding of the complex history of Newport. The gangster aspect that we explored is such a huge part of modern Newport's identity, and yet we might not have noticed it at all if it were not for this project. In fact, this project has given us all an increased awareness of what the potential stories or identities of landscapes can be, beyond just Newport.
Looking back, one aspect of this project that we wish we could have done differently is to coordinate our interview blogs better to where each member's blog connected to each other's a little bit more. Also, there were multiple areas we wanted to explore and incorporate into our posts that we either didn't have time for or they didn't end up fitting the theme. La Mexicana Restaurant and Bobby Mackey's nightclub were some of the few. But besides all that, we were all very pleased with how the project turned out. We all enjoyed the more informal tone that we were allowed to have when writing about the things we learned. I know I had some worries about this project when I saw we were going to have to do research, but doing research by exploring and finding what I was interested in was a huge motivator for me. There's just so much to learn when it came to Newport's history, definitely more than I ever thought there would be.
We hope you enjoyed following along with our blog as we journeyed through the landscape of Newport, Kentucky, and developed a better sense of its identity.